Welcome back, everyone, here to News Now from Fox, everybody. Well, we are just a couple of days away from the big Super Bowl game on Sunday. And News Now's Christy Larson talks with a sports performance therapist about the mental toughness and challenges these athletes face. How do they get ready and pumped up for maybe the biggest moment of their life and the biggest game of their life? Check this out.
When it comes time for the big game, a lot of people look at the physical aspect of it, but let's get into the mental part of what it takes for these players to play in the Super Bowl. We are joined with Dan Pastor, and let's first dive into what is sports psychology. Sports psychology is something I don't even think a lot of people have heard of.
Well, sports psychology, so the physical, that's what everyone is thinking about. Super Bowl, we're talking about Super Bowl, so the physicality, but the other part is the mental game. And the mental game actually is going to be more important than the physical piece when it all is said and done. Because, so get back to your question. So the training of the mental aspect kind of started Eastern European bloc, 70s, 80s. The Russians, the East Germans were really ahead of us. So the United States has been catching up in the realm of sports psych, training the brain to maximize the physical skill set. And that has to do with maximizing training. It has to do with maximizing recovery. It has to do with working with the ups and downs of sport, because that can just create havoc on the psyche. So there are specific tools and there's specific trainings, and these guys are going into Super Bowl, and I look forward to this conversation.
Yeah, so let's dive into that right away. You know, this is probably for some of them their biggest moment in their careers. So this is a lot of pressure. They're going into these games probably with a lot weighing on their minds.
Oh, well, except for Tom Brady, right? I mean, he's been here before. So yeah, but this is a different year, you know. So in even with this year, it's going to be most likely the biggest moment, hopefully, other than like a childbirth or something, they're going to go through in their lives. This Super Bowl, playing in the Super Bowl, you're going to have tens of thousands of people watching this, and the potential for immortality as an athlete is right in front of them during about a 3.5 hour span. So there's a lot on the line, for them. I'm excited for them.
I know that it's just a different way to kind of talk about the Super Bowl. So when they step out on that field, you know, they're getting warmed up, they do the coin toss. You know, what are some of the things they're probably going through their minds, and what should they remember to be actually focused on?
Well, at that point, after the coin toss, it's all of the training is going to kick in. So what they have to just do is remind themselves to trust their process, trust their training, remind themselves that they're on the field, and if they are trying to be something they're not, probably going to work out badly. If they stay within themselves and be their best self during that game, that's going to require some self-talk. It's going to require, as things look good for them, as things start to turn bad, because there's ebbs and flows during the game, is to keep as steady of a state as possible, but at a high frequency. So what I mean by that is, you've heard the term peak performance, right? You've heard of peak. So, you know, that's not sustainable by definition. So you think about the amount of focus, these guys, the acuity of the focus during the game, you know, it's not sustainable at 100%. So the task that they're going to have to do, and they've done this their whole career, but everything counts now on the Super Bowl, is to focus in and focus out. If you go to a football game rather than watching on TV, there's a lot of downtime in between plays. right? And that's when you can just drop it a notch, your level of focus, and then be able to ramp it back up just before the play. Okay. So that's the task. It's really like muscles in your arms and your legs. You've got to kind of conserve the energy that it takes to have complete and acute focus. So you tune it in, you tune it out. That's the skill set.
I'm sure it must be hard for them, though, to, like you said, kind of be in that moment, because they could also be thinking about, oh, I want them to talk about, my best tackle or my touchdown, my best play for years to come. So how do you kind of help athletes, no matter if they're going into the Super Bowl, maybe playing for the Stanley Cup, whatever sport it may be, kind of help them get into that mindset of, you can't be thinking about, what's going to happen after. You gotta stay in that moment.
Yeah, if kind of like if you want something, or you worry about something too much, you can actually kind of push it away. So an unintended consequence. So the beauty about sports is that you can, if you're in the right moment and you've prepared, good things are likely to happen. Versus if you're trying to make if in baseball, if you're trying to hit a home run, it's really tougher, the odds are, right? If you're trying to make a 60-yard run from scrimmage for some reason, because that's a record, but if you are in the moment, in the game, your presence, and you're just telling yourself, I'm going to be the best I can be today, and you're counting on everybody in your team to do the same thing. But it is enticing, isn't it? It would be so enticing to say, oh my goodness, if I make some spectacular play, they're going to be talking about this for years. So that is the seduction, isn't it?
Yeah. You had mentioned Tom Brady, and I think that's kind of one of the unique things is not all these players are going to get to go back to the Super Bowl multiple times. Is that more pressure on him, less pressure when he's already kind of done this game situation? Or, does that kind of weigh on his shoulders that he knows the team's kind of counting on him to help them carry out this win?
Well, it's a nice position to be in. I'm sure he wants to bring the Super Bowl trophy home to a new team. I think what he is driven by, it doesn't matter if it's 10 or 12 Super Bowls. He seems to have this, and it's a good thing, a chip on his shoulder, that when he came into Michigan, he wasn't the starting quarterback. And he talks about in interviews working with a sports psychologist who helped him, what he calls, be a man rather than a victim. So what he does is he's just out to prove himself day in and day out. And he says at Michigan, if he didn't really perform up to like give everything 100% Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, he didn't know if he was going to play on the weekend because they had so many quarterbacks. He says he brings that same mentality into the pros week in and week out. And, those guys are special. They're like a Michael Jordan. They're just so competitive, right? So I'm sure it's exciting for him. I'm sure this is what he trains for. And this validates all of the hard work during the season. And he's going to have so much more to give the younger players as far as just being a guy that's been there before, The Rock.
Yeah.
But how many fingers, those Super Bowl rings are huge. I mean, he's going to have to start putting them on his feet.
I do think, though, that this is a lesson that all athletes could really take. Like you said, kind of having that mentality that if I don't set my own goals and just kind of keep pushing myself, then that's when you kind of start to fall behind, is when you think, oh, I've reached my best, I'm doing great. You should always kind of keep setting those new expectations for yourself.
Yeah. And this is so transferable, these goals, right? I mean, there's process goals and outcome goals. And so, yeah, these guys are continually pushing But at some point, if you've been in the league long enough, I mean, it's really about sustaining a mindset that you're going to put it out there every day and you're going to be you. And your best you is what you're looking for. And that becomes the goal, is more of a consistency to be how good of a you can you bring to the game every single day, practice and whatnot. Because a life happens, right? I mean, these guys are going to be inundated with requests from family members and friends for tickets and little freebies and little souvenirs. And, you know, every week it's like that. But for the Super Bowl, there's a lot of pressure on these guys. And so they're going to have to, well, fortunately, the clubs protect a lot of the players around that. Like this year, the media day is not even happening, right? It's going to be on Zoom. So an interesting year, Super Bowl here with
Yeah.
the COVID influence. And oh my goodness, would you like to be the one that got kicked out because he tested positive right before the game? That would be an asterisk in the record book for the Super Bowl.
Well, like we've been saying, I mean, it is kind of for some of these players a once in a lifetime opportunity, but let's look past the game because obviously they have their own mental challenges that they have to overcome during the game. What kind of happens to these athletes afterwards too, because that can affect you mentally and your mental health as well?
Yeah, you know, there's a range of severity, but let's say somebody chokes. They just have a real bad, epic performance failure. My hunch is that some guys can actually feel like that is an emotional traumatic event, like getting hit by a bus, you know, like wartime. I mean, because there's so much writing on it. So fortunately, there are sports psychologists and therapists that these guys can talk to, right? And even more fortunately, they've done so beforehand, so they've got some insulation, so they prepared themselves for the eventual inevitable outcome, right? Good or bad, hero or goat. So, but boy, you think about how cool it would be, because you hear from guys what they miss most when they leave the game is the camaraderie. It's hanging out with the guys. So they go in a couple years after they retire and they're walking into the locker room and they're sporting that big old Super Bowl ring. My goodness, that has got to be a good feeling.
It's probably the best, I mean, that you could ever hope for in your career.
Other than the Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
you know, the Super Bowl ring is the thing. You know, and they're huge.
Yeah.
They probably weigh about 6 pounds, but these are big guys. So
I think they can handle taking on that weight. But let's just real quick also just mention, Dan, if you could, how you help other athletes, you know, really help them through the mental part of their game, because we want to talk about that no matter what sport you're in. You really do like to give a hand to those athletes.
I love what I do now because I get to talk to a range of different athletes and the athletically minded and performance minded. So there are a lot of transferable skills, right? Pre-performance anxiety is common whether you're an opera singer or a football player, right? So goal setting is big. I have a funny story about opera, by the way. I got called by the University of Arizona's Operatic Society to do a talk on pre-performance anxiety. And this is a guy that's afraid of doing karaoke.
Oh.
So it's good. Yeah, I'm working mostly with younger athletes, you know, 13, 14, 15, baseball players. These are club players. And the grind on these kids that are playing, you know, 8, 9, 10 months out of the year, the same sport. Not advisable. Get a more of a rounded athletic experience for young kids. The rate of burnout is huge, around 15, 16 for athletes that just focus on one sport. Like for hitters and everything, I talk about what's it like to be in the on-deck circle and you've seen the pitcher, you've timed the swings, What is it that you're going to tell yourself? What's the self-talk between the on-deck circle and the batter's box? Because it could go very differently if you're seeing, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can hit this guy, versus, I got this, right? I have trained for this moment. I have not cut the corners doing laps just for this moment. I am going to do well in this moment.
I'm
So,
sure that's some of the mental aspect that these players are going to need heading into the Super Bowl, that positivity and repeating to themselves, you know, I'm going to give it my best. So at the end of the day, win or lose, I know that I went in 100%.
yeah. And just to, that 100% is about my 100%, your 100%, Billy Bob's 100%, right? It's my best, my very best this given day, right? And when you dial that down, that's a little unique, right? It doesn't mean I'm going to score a certain amount of touchdowns. I'm going to have a certain amount of yardages, rushing, but I'm going to be showing up on every single play.
Yeah.
Like, you know, for baseball, if you take, let's say in pros, there's 500 at bats, let's say there's, oh, I don't know, 3-4 pitches in a bat. So if you threw out one baseball representing every pitch into the outfield, all green grass, but there's little pearls, and there's 1,500 pearls out there, right? You look at that and you go, how many times was I completely in that moment? And I was gonna, in that pitch, I was tuned in, I was present, and I was ready. Because if you were to take 10% of those balls away to say, no, my mind was wandering, you know, that's a couple of points of the batting average, and that could make the difference between making the team and not. So,
there's a lot that goes into it when we're talking about performing at your best. So again, head coach Dan Pastor, thanks so much for joining us, talking about that mental toughness these players are going to need.
thanks for having me.
Well, when it comes
And more news now from Fox will continue in just 2 minutes, everybody.